caged as property, until I called her my equal. The slavers' market reeked of rust, sweat, and fear. Torches hissed in their sconces, casting unkind shadows over the rows of cages that lined the stone walls. Behind iron bars, alien women of every kind sat hunched, their once proud eyes now dulled by chains. I had not meant to come here. My trade was relics and star maps, not flesh. But the auctioneer's cry had drawn me in, and when I saw her, I stopped breathing. She was smaller than most in the row, her skin pale like moonlight, her hair a tangled silver that shimmered even in the dim torchlight. But it was her eyes, piercing, defiant, storm gray, that locked onto mine. She did not cower. She did not look broken. She looked furious. The slaver jabbed his stick through the bars. This one's trouble. Tried to bite a guard. Pretty enough, though. Bidding starts at. I'll take her, I heard myself say. Gasps rippled. I hadn't even asked the price. Coins clattered from my pouch, enough to silence any protest. Minutes later, the cage door groaned open and they shoved her out. Her wrists were chained, her ankles bound, yet she still stood tall. When her gaze lifted to me, it was not gratitude, it was challenge. My ship hummed softly as it cut through the void. She sat across from me, still chained, eyes never leaving my face. I placed food on the table between us. Eat, I said. She did not move. I didn't buy you to starve. Her lips curled into a bitter smile. You bought me. That is enough. Her voice was sharp, carrying a weight that pressed against my chest. I don't keep slaves, I said carefully. Her laugh was short and without mirth. Then unchain me. I hesitated. If I freed her here, in the silence of space, she could slit my throat before I even reached the cockpit. Yet those eyes held me, daring me to prove myself. Slowly, I reached across the table and unlocked her cuffs. The chains hit the floor with a sound like thunder. She rubbed her wrists, gaze never wavering. Why? Because you don't belong in a cage. The days that followed were uneasy. She spoke little, her movements graceful yet guarded. At night, I heard her pacing in the narrow corridors of the ship, like a caged predator still testing invisible bars. Once, while repairing a relay, I felt her behind me. I turned and she stood close, too close, watching the sparks dance from my tools. You're reckless, she murmured. Reckless. You freed me without knowing who I am. What I could do. I wiped sweat from my brow. Then tell me. Her silence stretched long. Finally she whispered. I was a warrior. My people fought when your kind expanded into our skies. We lost. They took us and sold us. Her voice broke on the last word, and I realized she had never meant to tell me at all. Something in me shifted. I had freed her from chains, but the weight on her soul remained. On the 7th night, alarms shrieked through the ship. Raiders, slavers again, had locked onto our trail. Their ships bristled with hooks and harpoons, hungry to drag us into their nets. I scrambled to the controls, but before I could act, she was already there. Her hands danced across the panels, faster than I thought she could know them. The ship lurched, spun, and roared like a beast unleashed. She piloted through the storm of fire with precision born from war. Left thruster now, she barked, and I obeyed without hesitation. Together we wove through the raiders' traps until finally, with a roar of engines, we slipped free into the dark. Silence fell again, broken only by our ragged breathing. I turned to her, stunned. You saved us. She looked away, as if ashamed of her own strength. I fought because I would not be taken again. Not just for yourself, I said softly. You saved me too. Her eyes flicked back to mine, uncertain now. No chains bound her, yet she looked as though she still expected them. That night we shared no words, only silence thick with unspoken truths. But when dawnlight from a distant star spilled through the windows, I found her on the deck, staring at the horizonless void. "I am nothing now," she whispered. "No home, no people, only a name, carried by no one but me." I stepped beside her. "Then tell me your name." She hesitated, then barely audible. "Lyara. Lyara," I repeated, letting it settle into the air between us. "You are not nothing. You are not property. You are my equal." Her breath caught. She turned to me, and for the first time, the fury in her eyes softened. Not gone but tempered, like steel drawn from fire. In the days that followed, she no longer paced the halls at night. She sat at the table, unchained, sharing food without hesitation. She worked beside me on the ship, her hands steady, her voice calm. And once, when I caught her watching me, she did not look away. Perhaps she had been caged as property, but no longer. The chains that remained were not iron, but memory, and together we would break those too. For when I called her my equal, she finally began to believe it. That night, the ship drifted in silence, stars glittering outside like cold witnesses. I found her on the observation deck, sitting cross-legged, staring into the abyss. Her silver hair caught the faint glow of starlight, her profile sharp yet fragile, as though she were carved from broken hope. "I have no home left," she murmured when I approached. "No people to return to. The chains may be gone, but I am nothing." I stood beside her, letting the silence stretch before I asked, "Then what do you want to be?" She blinked, startled. "What? You are not property. Not a weapon. Not a shadow of defeat. You are Lyara." I spoke her name with care, as if it could tether her to the present. "You are my equal. If you'll stand with me, we can make something new. Not cages, not chains, just choice." Her eyes glistened, storm gray softening into something almost vulnerable. For the first time, she looked at me not as her captor, not as her savior, but as a man offering her a place at his side. "You would call me equal," she whispered. "I already have." She closed her eyes, breathing as if she hadn't in years, then gave the smallest of nods. When her gaze met mine again, it burned not with fury, but with quiet fire. Perhaps she had been caged as property, stripped of everything but her name. But now the first cracks had appeared in the walls of her captivity, not of iron but of memory. And standing there in the glow of distant suns, I knew we would walk forward together. Not master and slave, not rescuer and rescued, but equals.